You hear a lot in the media these days of like, this could be the biggest thing ever. But like, really, truly for NASCAR, this is one of the biggest stories in NASCAR history if this goes to trial, and the outcome could change the sport forever.
Steve Phelps just got caught red-handed in court, and what happened next shocked everyone in that Charlotte courtroom.
Lawsuit against NASCAR continues in a Charlotte federal courtroom. So an economist took the stand today and says that the racing giant's business practices contributed to racing teams losing millions of dollars.
On day 7 of the biggest trial in NASCAR history, the man who runs the show found himself staring at his own words, and they painted a pretty ugly picture. Attorney Jeffrey Kessler stood up and showed everyone an email that Steve Phelps himself wrote during the charter negotiations. And here's what it said. They are playing with fire. Lots of options, but all have the same theme. Pick a date, and they can sign or lose charters. It is that simple. That's not a negotiation, folks. That's a threat. That's someone saying, do what I want or else. Phelps tried to deny it right there in court. He looked straight at the jury and said, that is not what happened. But Kessler wasn't having any of it. He fired back with, we'll let the jury decide. And that's the thing. The jury now has to decide if they believe what Phelps says or what Phelps wrote, because those two things don't match up at all. But the money stuff is where things get really interesting. The court made Phelps reveal how much NASCAR pays him. As commissioner, he makes $2.5 million every single year. Before that, when he was president, he made $1.6 million, and on top of that base salary, he can get bonuses worth another $2.5 million. So we're talking about a guy who could be taking home $5 million a year. Now let's compare that to what the teams are dealing with. Bob Jenkins from Front Row Motorsports stood up in that same courtroom and said he's lost $100 million since he started racing in the early 2000s. Richard Childress, a legend who owned Dale Earnhardt's number 3 car, said his team would go broke if he didn't have other businesses keeping it alive. Even Michael Jordan's 2311 team lost $2 million in 2024. So you've got executives making millions while team owners are losing money hand over fist. The France family that owns NASCAR got paid almost $400 million over 4 years from 2021 to 2024. Phelps said 75% went to taxes, which leaves about $100 million. But still, the contrast is pretty clear. The people at the top are doing just fine, while the people actually racing are struggling to survive. Then we get to the track deals, and this is where NASCAR's control really shows. Phelps claimed he couldn't remember when NASCAR started putting exclusivity clauses in track agreements. Couldn't remember. But Jeff Gluck from The Athletic brought up an article from 2016 that shows exactly when it started. Dover Motor Speedway signed a deal that raised red flags even back then. Here's why that matters. NASCAR pays tracks $311 million in 2024. $130 million of that goes to tracks NASCAR doesn't even own. An economist named Edward Snyder testified that these payments aren't necessary. He said tracks could host more events and make more money on their own, but NASCAR pays them to stay exclusive, to make sure no other racing series can use those tracks. The system is set up to keep NASCAR in control. Tracks get paid to stay loyal, teams get trapped with nowhere else to race, and NASCAR keeps its grip on everything. From 2021 to 2024, NASCAR made an average of $250 million every year. In 2024 alone, they had a net income of $103 million. Goldman Sachs valued the whole company at $5 billion in 2023. Meanwhile, what are the teams getting? The new charter agreement pays each chartered car $12.5 million per season. Sounds good until you realize it costs $20 million just to bring one car to all 38 races. That's before you pay the driver, before you pay for the building, before you pay your employees. You're already $7.5 million in the hole before you start. Out of 12 teams that shared their financial records, only 3 made money in 2024. 3 out of 12. And we're not talking about small operations. These are professional race teams with millions of dollars invested. Now let's talk about the NextGen car, because Steve Phelps had some bold things to say about it. He told the court, the racing is just better, so it has accomplished what I hoped it would accomplish. Then he added, I believe this is the safest car in all of motorsports. The courtroom gasped, literally gasped. Michael Jordan laughed out loud. So did Denny Hamlin and Bob Jenkins, because they all know what actually happened with this car. Kurt Busch's career ended after a NextGen crash at Pocono in 2022. When Phelps mentioned some little hits, people in that courtroom laughed. Kurt Busch's career is over. That's not a little hit. Attorney Jeffrey Kessler made sure to point that out. He asked Phelps directly if Kurt Busch retired because of a concussion. Phelps had to say yes. And here's the other problem with the NextGen car. NASCAR said it would cost $205,000. Teams would save money. That was the whole pitch. But the actual cost ended up being almost double, close to $400,000 per car. Why? Because teams have to buy parts from NASCAR-approved vendors only. They can't shop around for better prices. They can't make their own repairs. Bob Jenkins put it perfectly when he said, "Oh, I don't own that car. I can't use that car anywhere else." Teams are paying way more than promised for a car they don't even really own. And if they want to race somewhere else, too bad. That car is locked to NASCAR only. Then there's the whole SRX situation. SRX was a short track racing series that Tony Stewart helped create. It ran for 3 years before shutting down. And when text messages from NASCAR executives got leaked, we found out what they really thought about it. Steve Phelps wrote, "Need to put a knife in this trash series." Not exactly subtle. He said he was concerned the moment he heard about SRX because it looked like NASCAR. The colors, the sponsors, the way it all appeared on TV. He called it an FU to us, referring to team owners like Denny Hamlin who raced in it. In court, Phelps explained he was frustrated our owners were racing in a series using sponsors, colors, and liveries that looked like NASCAR. NASCAR's lawyers looked into whether SRX violated any rules. They found it didn't. But NASCAR still blocked SRX from racing at North Wilkesboro Speedway, and eventually SRX shut down, claiming financial reasons. The timing sure seems suspicious to a lot of people. All of this comes back to the charter negotiations and what teams were asking for. They had 4 main requests: permanent charters, a voice in how NASCAR is run, 33% of future revenue, and a bigger share of current revenue. They called these their 4 pillars. NASCAR said no to all of it. The charters still aren't permanent. Teams still don't have a real say in decisions. The revenue split, while better than before, is nowhere near what teams asked for. Curtis Polk, Michael Jordan's financial advisor, led the negotiations for the teams. Steve Phelps said Polk and the team council never wavered off their 4 pillars and called it one of the most challenging and longest negotiations I've ever been part of. But the real roadblock was Jim France. He's the chairman of NASCAR, and internal messages from executives called him a brick wall. Steve O'Donnell, the NASCAR president, sent a message about a strategy meeting that said France's message was clear. We are in competition. We are going to win. Not we want to work together. Not we want a partnership. We are going to win. Like it's a war, not a business. Teams are losing money despite winning races. Drivers are risking their lives without fair compensation. And at the center of it all, Steve Phelps and Jim France are holding all the power and refusing to share it.